everybody, and welcome to this very special interview today. Now, recent rain along the east coast of Australia has heightened mould awareness. However, mould is actually a common problem that Australia has with about 10 to 50% of homes affected. There are many buildings affected with mould that many of them you may not even realise you're frequenting, such as schools and rental buildings and churches, and of course, maybe even your home. So mould can cause dangerous health problems, and many people who have asthma know that their asthma can be triggered by exposure to mould. However, even non-asthma sufferers are at risk. We didn't even realise we had a mould problem at first in a previous home until our daughter would come and sit on the lounge and say, I'm having trouble breathing. I've got a bit of, I feel tense in my chest. And this went on for a little while, but we noticed it was only when she sat on the lounge. So we had a house that was off the ground. My husband got underneath, and sure enough, there was a whole lot of mould in that very area where we had the lounge. So that triggered our interest in this topic and really heightened our awareness that even things like that can be triggered by hidden enemies such as mould. Now, research shows that mould and related airborne particles are associated with a wide range of health issues. And the most common are things like headaches and breathing difficulties, colds, aching muscles, nausea, fever, allergies, coughing and flu-like symptoms, even sore throats and sinus congestions. But there's other symptoms, including fatigue, eye and vision problems, irritability, learning difficulties, skin sores, sleep disorders, lightheadedness, dizziness, vertigo, anxiety, anger, and even nosebleeds and rashes. So Dr. Edward Close is a recognised expert in environmental science. He's got more than 45 years experience in the field. He's written numerous papers, and he states that issues that have been scientifically linked to mould include asthma, weight gain, anxiety, chronic fatigue, depression, allergies, dermatitis, insomnia, hives, and much more. And what he says is that mould infests, it colonises, and it destroys our bodies, and that can include our brains. It uses our skin and every opening in our body to attack us. And when mould finds a foothold in the body, it starts reproducing itself and using your body and your organs and your tissues and your blood. And that then creates irritation, which then leads to inflammation. It's really, really so concerning, and these concerns are rising, especially at the moment. So I have a very special guest with me today who has, through unfortunate circumstances, now a vast knowledge on mould and what we can do to protect ourselves and rid ourselves of it. So Alexx Stuart's passions run wide and deep. She founded the online community and education hub Low Tox Life in 2010. And she is responsible for birthing the low tox movement with the phrase low tox that has resonated with people around the world. Her international best-selling book, Low Tox Life, and podcast by the same name have supported millions in achieving their personal, home, and planet health goals. She's a sought-after speaker and consultant to organisations that are committing to change for good, whether it's a focus on people's health or the planet's. Now, when it comes to the topic of mould, while most people think mould is something that you just wipe off, or dare I say bleach off, Alexx can attest that it's a very different story for many. One thing that really struck me when I was reading through Alex's story was when she said at one stage she couldn't even walk her son to school just down the road. Thank you so much for joining me today, Alexx.
Oh, you're so welcome, Naomi. I'm always happy to help people navigate this topic that can bring a lot of stress and confusion.
Yeah. I'm hoping that you might start today by sharing a little more about how and when you realised that mould was affecting you.
Yeah, so it really was a culmination of 7 years living in a water-damaged building that we didn't know was quite as water damaged as it was. I remembered when we first moved in, there were big rains and there were leaks. But the landlord was so forthcoming. For the first time in our lives, we had someone who replaced the roof with fresh tiles, put in whirlybirds, and we thought, oh my gosh, we're finally somewhere where they care and they look after the place when something goes wrong. But unfortunately, that leak would have made its home in the walls. And it wasn't kind of current affair situation where you bust in and you see black walls of mould. It really wasn't. It was a lovely, big, bright apartment, but we just had no idea that it was growing in the walls. And so you could have rationalized anything that I had the first few years down to busy mum and business owner. Weight gain, resistant weight loss, bit of brain fog, hormones that just constantly seem to need balancing, a little bit of anxiety and just feeling on high alert, but not crazy. And then one year I started developing a tearing eye. And as a public speaker, like strategically wiping my eye all the time, I was like, I've really got to get this sorted out, even though it wasn't painful or anything that you'd think like, oh my gosh, there's something really wrong. So I went to an ophthalmologist, and I hope that no one else ever has to have a thing put in their tear duct to see if it can be flushed out. Oh. It's extremely uncomfortable, but it couldn't flush out. Like all the water on this side just flushed straight back out the top, and then this one was fine, and I could feel it. You can feel it going through the back of your nose when your tear duct flushes properly. Yeah. So this one was completely blocked. That wasn't something she could correct, so she sent me to an oculoplastic surgeon, and in between times, I had been overseas to my cousin's wedding, and the leak had stopped while I was there. Then I came back, and it came back. And I said to this surgeon, don't you think it's interesting that, like, when I was away, I didn't have it, and then when I came back, it came back? Like, could it be, I don't know, something to do with Sydney, like allergies? I was still thinking like trees around my house or something like that. I'd never really clocked mold as something more than annoying if it popped up in my life. And he said, yeah, look, it could just be that you were swimming a lot and you were flushing it out well every day, and it was able to calm down. And I was like, oh, okay. When you're talking to a surgeon, you don't really feel like you're particularly empowered, given they've spent not only undergrad med, but postgrad and surgery grad degrees. You tend to feel like that person really knows what they're talking about. And yes, of course he does to a certain extent. But in this case, retrospectively, that tear duct was blocked because I was hugely inflamed.
Yes.
Tear ducts are tiny, and they are one of the first things to block up if you have systemic inflammation. So it's not, he said, it's weird, we couldn't even find anything in there. And he put a stent in to open it back up. And then that stent was taken out 6 weeks later. But my eyes tear up if I'm in a moldy environment now, and I just know what it is.
So that's like your radar now.
Yeah, I've got to get out of here, take a couple of charcoal for a couple of days, get a good night's sleep, and then it all gets sorted. But it was really that surgery and going through a general anaesthetic where my body was very high alert, combined with high exposure to toxins for a long period of time, combined with a general anaesthetic experience and the adrenaline that they use to make an anaesthetic take hold. And it basically pushed my body into a traumatic overdrive experience. That's when the heart problems started, the nervous system issues, twitching, tremor, muscle spasms involuntarily, all sorts of crazy, scary things. And I remember actually it was the travel agent who books the Young Living flights. And he said, which is probably par for the course booking any travel booking, he said, is there anyone in the party traveling that needs a wheelchair? And I had been declining for sort of 4 or 5 months at that point. And I thought to myself, and this is exactly when I was really finding it tricky to even just walk Seb down the road to school, thought, God, by March, maybe I will. And I had no idea what was wrong with me. None. No one else knew either. I had been to a cardiologist. My heart was apparently fine. And it was apparently very normal to have so many ectopic beats and arrhythmia at the age of 40. And I was like, okay, I'm so glad I just spent $2,500 with you doing every test possible. I'd seen my doctor. We'd run so many tests. I'd seen my naturopath. Things only got worse, where normally I would get so much better if I'd seen my naturopath. But obviously, high-dose probiotics, when you're extremely inflamed, can go one of two ways if they're the wrong probiotics for your system. And yeah, it was a really terrifying, dark time. It's kind of hard to even be with those feelings anymore, because it's just, I've worked so hard to move through them and beyond them, that I talk about them quite matter-of-factly now. But I mean, I think about that person that I was at that time, and I can't believe I made it through. There were some very dark moments.
And when you think about it, because not many people talk about the illness side of mold exposure, that wouldn't have even entered your mind, I guess.
No. I really had to figure it out myself.
Yeah.
And ever since then, of course, have been an advocate for helping people join the dots. But something I want to say here, which I think is really important, is, and you used the words take hold earlier in your introduction in terms of what mold does, and that is spot on in that. Think about if you've had a couple of days where you've eaten a ton of sugar, there've been parties, it's been Christmas, then all you have to do is hug someone who's got a cold or COVID, and boom, you're out, you're getting it, right? Because it's been able to take hold.
Yes.
So I don't want everybody freaking out that every time you see a tiny bit of mold, like in your grout, or you go to a restaurant, smells a bit musty, or you notice a dirty aircon. These are not dangerous situations for a body that is in optimal balance. I had been in a huge high growth stress period with Low Tox Life at that point, still running my hospitality consultancy. What else? Oh yeah, that's right. My husband had started his own business. It was an extremely challenging time where I was running on empty already.
So your body was already under some stress.
Huge
amount. Perfect vehicle for mold to take.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really think it's important that we realise that, yes, there is some evidence that a certain genetic population is more susceptible. I happen to be in that population. But I genuinely believe it is a soup of things that set you up for a fall. It's never just one big baddie and then that's okay, we just got to conquer that big thing and then we're done. Because I can tell you right now, you move out of the mouldy apartment, sure, a lot of things get better because your body isn't under that environmental stress anymore. Then you've actually got to deal with the body you had before that was stressed in the first place from whatever else was going on, which is why I think nervous system work is so critical in any kind of chronic illness, because people who become chronic ill, it's usually a setup of a lot of emotional trauma or a lot of physical trauma. Maybe you had a big virus and it just took you a while to get over it, and then something else was able to knock you down, like a parasite infection or mold or, a tick. The things like this genuinely tend to be straw that break the camel's back experiences on already down and out bodies and minds.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? Your body's in that stress mode, and then it's exposed to something that could potentially then cause a further damage, and then you're stressing it. So you're in this continuous cycle until you get that awareness or that answer to stop that cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think working with trauma and working with what you already know to be issues that you've had in the past and resolving those is every bit as important as working on the new thing that might have made things a lot worse. But that doesn't save the fact that right now on the East Coast, everyone seems to have realised this year, thanks to the sheer amount of La Nina activity and heightened weather experiences due to climate change. I mean, it is like playing out before our eyes now. There's nothing we can try and rationalise this away from climate destabilisation. A lot of people realise, oh my gosh, I actually can't manage my house in this circumstance anymore. I actually have to intervene either by remediating, by fixing leaks we didn't even know were there, by changing the way the gutters are around the house, by putting on a steel roof because the tiles seem to just get caned every time we get heavy rain. Whatever it is, people are really realising that East Coast living is now so humid for so many months of the year, and now also so much more rainfall, whether there's a La Nina or not. And when there's more rainfall, we tend to get what we call these rain bombs, which in climate science basically just means it's not necessarily that the average rainfall is getting a lot higher, but it's that the rain that does fall comes very fast and thick.
Right.
And creates these flash flood experiences that so many of us have had. And I saw photos around Camden. It was horrifying. Places that bone dry normally.
Exactly. And what was really interesting, Camden is in a floodplain, so there's some of it that is in a floodplain. But what I found interesting, and you just explained it beautifully there with talking about the rain bomb, is that previous years, okay, there's been a flood. Sometimes it's been pretty bad through that specific area that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it happened and it drained away. But then all of a sudden, 2 days later, it was back and it was worse because of this massive downpour that had happened. And I've never seen that before.
No, I used to travel to Tahiti for work. Thankfully, it was a very lovely experience in my early 20s in cosmetics. And I remember just opening my car window to pay for the parking when I was visiting one of our customers. The rain was one of these rain bombs, like something that tropical countries would really know and experience, and it's kind of your norm. And it's why you see all the villages built around tops of hills and absolutely nothing in the troughs. But, here we've had 100-year rainfall experiences, like, 3 times in the last 10 years? We can't call them 100-year anymore. No. So we have to now learn to deal with these more humid environments, and that is going to mean not becoming experts at cleaning mold, but actually becoming experts at designing our home spaces to be able to deal with a more humid climate. I think anyone who's got a budget should consider retrofitting passive house technology into their home. So that is where you basically install a lung system for your home that filters air in, sends bad air out, and keeps humidity really, really low and keeps the temperature really constant. You can retrofit passive house technology to a normal house. Right. So I would definitely consider that. But anyone who is building from scratch right now, it is going to be so worth it as we head into these very uncertain times of climate change to get a passive house. Just build a passive house. Don't even look at anything else. It is about 1.5 times the cost per square metre. But what you end up with is little to no energy costs, great 18 to 20 degree temperature all year round inside.
Perfect.
Triple glazing, so you get no condensation, transfer, and all those humidity issues with regular homes. And I think they're just amazing. But then there's the rest of us who actually have to deal with what we've got. Yeah. So in that case, I think the most important thing you can do is get a leak assessment for whether your home has any weak points right now. Maybe you've recognised them in the last little while with bubbling paint or wet stains or even actual water coming in from certain areas. There is no better time to get a building biologist in or a company who's able to assess thermal technology leaks in the home to just basically do a health check. It's like taking your house to a GP. And
I love that analogy. That's
well, we don't think to do that. But as I was saying on another call the other day, 100 years ago, we had people managing our house and every inch of it was managed. Yeah. There was a housekeeper. There was, if you were upper class, there was a butler. There were servants. Anyone in middle and upper class had at least 2 to 3, if not more people, making sure the home was looked after. Home maintenance is just not a priority in the busy modern life, and we need to bring it back.
Yes.
So number 1, take your house to the GP with a building biologist or a leak specialist to assess whether you've got any water coming in anywhere, whether you've got any cracked tiles. Number 2 is get dehumidifiers. Based on the size of your home, you may need multiple units. We're in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we have 2 little compact 16-litre dehumidifiers, and they work just fine. I put one between the laundry and the bathroom. So after all our showers in the evening, it gets run for a couple of hours. The bathroom's bone dry. Then you never have to worry about cleaning the mould.
Yes.
Save your money on thieves. Use it for yourself when you're sick.
That's right. Exactly.
Then you don't need to use it for cleaning mould. And then in the laundry, if you don't have a condenser dryer, or if it doesn't really excellently flue to outside and get that humidity out of your laundry space, if you have to use a dryer, then you have to use a dehumidifier, because otherwise you'll know. So many people tell me, oh my gosh, there's so much mold in my laundry, I don't know how to figure it out. Well,
that's
actually,
what I'm hearing a lot from a lot of people. What can I do with mold? All of a sudden that awareness is
it's there.
Yeah.
So just get a teeny tiny dehumidifier, like an 11-litre or a 16-litre compact from Oz Climate. They're my favourite. And actually, I have a year-long code this year, Low Tox Life, which people can use to get 10% off, because they're our podcast sponsors. And then so we run one of the compacts in the living room if it's raining overnight while we're sleeping. And then I just share it between the 2 bedrooms over the course of the day when we're not in the bedrooms, just to make sure everything stays dry, clothes don't get musty with the extra humidity inside. But if you have more than a 2-bedroom apartment, and if you have a big living, dining combined situation, you're going to need a good, powerful 35-litre unit.
Right.
And that thing will fill up in the day. It's really quite incredible when it's raining. And then outside of rain, just from December to early March, you just want to run it a good couple of times a week, because it is far more humid. And then that will mean that you never have to worry about mold growing on shoes, bags, leather jackets. We've got these sorts of, there we go.
Oh, the quilted chairs.
Yeah, we've got quilted chairs, so you never have to worry about those getting damp and musty. You know how when you sit on your couch in the middle of summer, sometimes everything just feels a bit wet, and it's not wet, it's just that it's more humid, and so things are sticking, moisture's sticking. You really want to make sure everything gets dried out. And actually, something that's really useful for people who live in spaces that really are very big and open plan is you just get all your cushions, sofa inserts, throws that are on your rugs, quilted chairs if you've got those, put them in your smallest bedroom and chuck a really good, powerful dehumidifier on in there, close the door, and it'll get everything dried out really, really well. Whereas your big open space, it's much harder to get that humidity below 60 degrees.
We've got a massive open space, and I'm just sitting here going, oh, God, I need 2 of the big ones.
Well, yeah, that's actually, we were talking about this the other day in the club, which is Esther, one of the members, was like, oh my gosh, like I just can't get it below 60% humidity, which is what we need to try and do for mold prevention. And I said, just put your 2 massive units on overnight in that area, close all the windows while you're all sleeping, and you should be able to get it under there. And she got it down to 58, which was
wow.
Yeah, really, really good.
Just stuck in there, but she did it. That's great.
So if you can do that once a week even in the summer, then that'll mean you just, honestly, unless you've got a systemic leak like we were talking about before, you're just not going to have to worry. Yeah.
And I guess because one of the statistics I talk about in one of my women's health talks is that we're spending 90% of our time indoors now. And that these statistics are from before COVID. So it's a whole lot.
Who knows what it is now?
Yeah, exactly. So we're spending that much time indoors, and there is a problem that you're not aware of. You could maybe start looking at the list of symptoms you have or whatever you're experiencing and go, you know what, maybe I need to look into this a little bit more now, because this could be the reason, because I'm sitting in here 90% of the time. So.
Absolutely. And then in terms of indoor air environment, if you think about that soup and the straw that breaks the camel's back, it might be mold that you notice at the end, but what if you had a couple of pets, lived near a busy street, so there was pollution? What else could it be? Dust mites. Yeah. A lot of, like if you've newly renovated, there could be formaldehyde and other VOCs, off-gassing paints. The indoor environment is riddled with things that can weaken our systems. So yeah, like dehumidification is one thing, obviously, but if you live with any of that laundry list that I just rattled off, you might want to consider air filters as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some great tips for, I guess, setting yourself up for success when it comes to reducing the humidity and that sort of thing. What I wanted to maybe just touch on before we finish up, two areas that I think people may be dealing with at the moment. One is the general home that's got a little bit of mold in the shower, some musty smelling cupboards, and the other is the floods and post-flood. So I'm hoping that just you can just sit there as Alex, and maybe she's in a home that's got, some mold in the shower and some musty smelling sort of cupboards. Yeah. What would you do in that situation?
So with the musty smelling cupboards, if they're on the other side of the wall from a kitchen or a bathroom, I would investigate a leak just in case, because there's a reason that wardrobe smells musty. Sure, it could just be dust gathered on the clothes combined with a super wet summer, and then mold starts to grow. So for sure, that could be it. But definitely look behind all your clothes, make sure there are no water stains, there's no bubbling paint. And if you took all the clothes out of there, would it still smell musty?
Right.
But then you've got to deal with your clothes. So my favourite is to do a triple wash. That's what I've done when I've left our last two places that we had to leave. And I've been able to save everything except for one really thick jacket that we just couldn't save. So wash number one, you really want to wear an N95 mask for this, because ammonia is definitely not low tox, but it is exceptional at killing mold. It is honestly the most powerful thing that you could use on clothes, and it's not going to damage your clothes, luckily. So a half cup of ammonia per wash, and just that, and you want to go at 60 degrees or hotter. Then your second wash is going to be a cup of borax, and then 60 degrees or more. And then your third wash is going to be a couple of caps of Thieves, the household cleaner, and whatever laundry detergent you use. If you use the Thieves, however much you use of that, and then one final 60-degree wash.
Okay.
You will be able to save your clothes.
That's fabulous. I know a lot of people worry about that. I'm just going to have to throw everything out now. So even though
some seasonal swap over as well. So like if all my winter stuff has been just piled up and sitting there, before we start using all our winter stuff, I'll run it through a good couple of, I'll just do a 2-wash system then seasonally, and that'd be the borax first. Don't need to do ammonia unless you are in SOS mode. The borax and then the Thieves combo, that works beautifully for just freshening everything up as well.
So for those that don't know what we're talking about when we're talking about Thieves, there are some products Alex and I both absolutely love. I'll put some details below where you see this video, but I know some of the ingredients that are in those products, even Dr. Close that I mentioned earlier, would absolutely attest to using. So 3 washes and with the different sort of solutions that you advise, but I'll pop all that below as well. The other scenario I wanted to go through, the mold in the shower type situation. What would you do?
So number one is you obviously just want to clean that away. Make yourself a good little DIY grout cleaner with some bicarb. Again, the Thieves household cleaner is great to chuck in there as well, and a little bit of water. Give it all a really good scrub. That doesn't necessarily whiten mold, but it does make it ineffective. If you want to whiten it, again, this is not low tox, but using a bit of topical bleach or oxygen bleach, which is more low tox, to at least cosmetically remove the mold, but that doesn't kill it. So you really do need to get rid of it. Best case scenario is you actually regrout when you've got mold, and then you move to preventative, where you literally will never have mold in your bathroom again, which is putting in a compact dehumidifier after showers. That means you literally don't have a mold problem ever again in your bathroom unless you've got a leak. And I think people go, oh, okay, it's actually, I don't actually have to worry about trying to clean it anymore, because you get so many questions about cleaning it. Why, let's work towards not having it in the first place for most of the time that we can actually do that.
Exactly. And again, with that Thieves household cleaner, it's plant-based. So we would get our kids to, once you finish, spray it and just give it a wipe, and that's it. Easy.
Yeah.
So preventing anything.
Yeah.
Finally, I just wanted to talk about, obviously floods are a massive topic here, especially in Queensland and New South Wales at the moment. And I wanted to use some photos as reference points to get you to have a look at these photos and go, okay, this is what I would ditch, this is what I would keep, and this is what we need to protect for future. And this is my girlfriend's house, Laura, who had floodwaters travel through it. The water actually sat in there for 4 days. And these photos were actually taken 24 hours after the water subsided. She said there's mounds of mold on the floor. It's all over her boys' soft toys. And as you'll see in the photos, it actually already took hold of the lounge. So I'll just... There we go. So this is the, excuse me, this is the living area of their holiday home. And this was within 4 days.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's taken hold. So what would you keep? What would you ditch? And is there anything you could do to protect that sort of area?
So, look, again, this comes down to budget and perfect case scenario for your health. Perfect case scenario is you ditch the lounge completely. Budget scenario is you remove those covers from the seats. You get a dehumidifier in to dry out the whole lounge otherwise. And you do the 3-wash system with those covers and then sun dry them at the end.
Right.
And see if you've managed to get the mold and the must out of them. You might need to replace them, in which case, if the body of the couch seems to still be okay, like that part could have just gotten moldy because that's where everybody sits and that's where the most amount of dust and things that mold can use as a food source are.
Right.
So you might actually be all right. But if it has gone in through the foam, then you would need to, but the body of the couch is okay, you could look at getting some foam pieces cut, and then once you've triple washed the covers, putting those on fresh foam of the same dimensions.
And so obviously the cupboard, I can see it's got water damage anyway, so that's I would assume is going.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately, especially cupboards that have that really soft wood, MDF particle board, that kind of set up within their structure. It's just a lost cause, unfortunately. Yeah.
And then this is just another last few photos. This her little boy's rooms. And you can obviously see there's water damage in that middle photo there. And even if you look at the bedside table, the water had gotten right up and underneath. So you have to be careful and look underneath all the furniture as well, don't you?
Absolutely. You've got to turn everything upside down. So in this situation, I would just have a look with a leak specialist whether there's actually something systemic there that's causing water to come through the wall like that. Maybe it bubbled. Like, how far up did the water go?
I believe, well, in looking at the boys' room, I think it came up to just sort of the bottom half of the beds, or I guess it obviously came up under that bedside table as well.
Yeah, so that bubbling paint could be just because it got really wet in there. But any bubbling paint, you always want to make sure it's not something in the walls traveling out.
Yeah.
A lot of people end up having to just replace all their drywall because that's what stays wet after floods, and that's what causes the mold to grow. So the brick exterior is often completely fine, but replacing all the drywall might be something you need to do. So
I'm guessing the boys' toys need to go, the soft toys.
Well, it's only been 4 days, so that mold might not have taken hold inside. It could still just be on the surface.
Yeah.
So I do the triple wash of the soft toys. We've been able to save most of Seb's soft toys over the years with triple wash and sun dry.
Excellent.
And then dryer dry, as in the dryer, just to really make sure the whole thing's completely dry. I would give it a go. Just see what you can save. Yeah. But please wear PPE equipment when you're cleaning mold and dealing with, especially if you're going to use ammonia in your first wash. You really want to make sure you're masked up and wearing gloves.
And I think also when people are doing the clean out too, I've seen lots of vision of people walking in the homes and pulling the things out with no masks on, and the mold spores are already, thriving in the air anyway. So let's mask up when we're doing that as well.
N95 as an absolute minimum. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Alexx. Is there anything you wanted to finish on for anyone?
Yeah, I think the most something to finish on is, yes, this is going to be tough, and yes, you've got to clean everything up. But remember, the health of your home and the health of your investments is really important. And we can, eat simpler food for a couple of months. There are a lot of things we can do to make sure that we can prioritize those things in the wake of what the East Coast has just been through. Obviously, some people have had their complete livelihood from their shop in town through to their home completely wiped out, and there are some really severe cases of cleanup required. And then there's everybody else who's on the spectrum of severe to, our kitchen window had a bit of a leak, so there's lots of different people dealing with different things right now. And I want to say, if this is a stressful time for you financially or physically, emotionally, because of the sheer magnitude of it all, just make sure you're looking after yourself. Make sure you've got a friend who you can cuddle and just say, I'm finding this really hard, so that you have some emotional support during a traumatic time, because looking after our nervous systems is going to mean that we can actually face this and move through it strong, rather than from that place of weakness, which then is when environmental things can start knocking us down. So take care is my final thing that I want to say.
Beautiful. Thank you, Alexx. Now, how can people reach you? That's through Low Tox Life.
Absolutely. Everything's called Low Tox Life, extremely uncreative. So on Instagram, the podcast is called Low Tox Life. We've actually got quite a few podcasts with doctors and specialists on mold over the years as well, for people who might want to follow that. And if you need any more of my mold resources, just Google "So You Think You've Got Mold, Low Tox Life," and the post will come up with everything I've ever done on the subject over the years. And that's it. Yeah, lowtoxlife.com is the website as well.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and for all of your tips. I know that it is going to help a lot of people, even just the amount of questions I'm getting. Can we use this? Can we throw this? What do we do? There's so many people that are being affected. So I'm sure that you've just helped a whole lot of people. So thank you from them, and thank you from me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Naomi. Have a great day.
You too.